My name is David Carson, and I thought I had the kind of life most people envied: a steady job, a loving wife, and a quiet home in Dallas. For 8 years, I believed in every smile, every kiss, every lie she fed me. But one morning, she kissed me goodbye for a business trip and walked straight into the arms of my best friend. She thought I'd never find out. She thought I'd just take it. What she didn't know was, I had a plan, and when I was done, she would lose everything she betrayed me to chase. My wife, Rachel, was sharp, driven, and polished in all the ways that made her admired by friends and coworkers alike. She worked in marketing, the kind of high-stakes, high-stress world where long hours and business trips weren't out of the ordinary. I never questioned it. I should have. That morning felt like any other. The sun hadn't quite risen. The coffee maker was still gurgling its first pot, and Rachel stood by the front door in a crisp gray blazer, suitcase by her side, hair perfectly done. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, warm and casual like she always did before traveling. "Wish me luck," she said with that smile she always wore before heading to a big client meeting. I smiled back and said, "Knock him dead." She laughed and rolled her suitcase out to the car. As I watched her drive off, I didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time I'd ever see her the same way. I stood there for a moment longer than usual, staring at the empty driveway. Something in my chest was tight, like a pressure building under the surface, but I shrugged it off. I chalked it up to stress, maybe a little distance between us lately. Rachel had been preoccupied for months, often away late, always checking her phone, always claiming it was work. But I had been doing some of my own checking, quietly, patiently. And what I had discovered in the last few days had shattered the image of our perfect marriage. Her business trip to New York wasn't business at all. It was a getaway. With Kyle, my best friend. The same guy who had stood beside me at our wedding. The one who toasted us on our 5th anniversary. The one I played poker with every other Friday night. I still remember the first time I saw his name pop up on Rachel's phone, not as a call, but as a message. A text that started casual and turned intimate, then explicit, then criminally detailed. Plans, hotel names, dates, secrets layered in flirty emojis and late-night wishes. I wanted to vomit, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. I played it cool. Watched. Waited. Let her believe she was safe in her lies. Let her believe she'd fooled me completely. Because I had a plan. And it started the moment she drove off for her meeting. I walked straight to my home office, sat down at my desk, and logged into every joint account we had. Checking, savings, credit cards. With methodical precision, I transferred every last cent into my personal account, the one she didn't know I had. The one I opened a year ago after she accidentally forgot to tell me about a $2,000 charge to a hotel in Miami. I wasn't just reclaiming my money. I was reclaiming control. Then came the next step. I opened our mobile carrier account. 2 clicks, and she was off the plan. Her number? Blocked. Her access to our Netflix, Hulu, even the damn DoorDash account? Revoked. It was petty, maybe, but sometimes pettiness feels like justice. I changed the locks on the front door, scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney, and made a list of the few people in my life who deserved to know the truth before Rachel spun her version of events. By noon, I'd done more in a few hours than I had in years of keeping our marriage afloat. And you know what I felt? Not regret, not fear, relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the fool smiling through someone else's deception. I wasn't the man buying flowers for a wife who was planning rendezvous with another man. I was just a man taking his life back. I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, the one she used to make for me every morning, and stared at the silence of our house. No laughter, no clinking heels, just me, and the truth. I imagined them checking into that hotel, arm in arm, thinking they'd pulled it off. I pictured Kyle smirking as he slid his key card into the door, Rachel giggling like a teenager. And I smiled, because I knew exactly what was coming next. No money, no access, no safety net. She thought she could walk away with everything. She didn't realize I'd already taken it back. And that was just the beginning. After I cut Rachel off, financially, digitally, emotionally, I sat back and waited. Not with anxiety, but with focus. There was a strange stillness in the house, the kind that follows a storm or precedes one. I could feel it in my chest, quiet, heavy, and brimming with anticipation. I knew it wouldn't take long for the cracks to show. She probably didn't even notice it right away. She likely spent the first few hours of her trip basking in the thrill of forbidden freedom, convincing herself that she had everything under control. Maybe she and Kyle were clinking champagne glasses in the back of a rideshare, laughing about how easy it had all been. Maybe she had her designer purse slung over her shoulder, stepping into a Manhattan hotel suite that I was supposed to believe was funded by her job. But things were about to change. It started with the bank accounts. I left her just enough money to notice something was off. A single-digit balance that would get flagged the moment she tried to swipe her card for dinner. Then came the phone plan. The second her phone lost service, she'd assume it was a glitch. Maybe she'd restart it, reset the settings, try toggling airplane mode on and off like it was just a signal issue. But eventually, reality would set in. She'd open her banking app, and it wouldn't load. She'd try calling me, and the call wouldn't go through. She'd switch to text, nothing. She'd panic. And that image, that precise moment when realization hit her, when her perfect little affair collided with the brick wall of consequences, gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. You see, Rachel wasn't just cheating on me. She was doing it with the arrogance of someone who thought she'd never be caught, never be challenged. She had manipulated my trust, leaned on my loyalty, and weaponized my routine to cover her tracks. Every late night at the office, every unexplained charge, every sudden interest in yoga retreats and networking events. I'd swallowed it all, too proud or too blind to confront it. And now, I was done being silent. That afternoon, I sent a single group message to 5 of our closest mutual friends, people she would undoubtedly try to spin her story to once the fallout began. I told them the truth. I didn't rant or rage. I simply said, Rachel's not on a business trip. She's in New York with Kyle. I have the messages. I've already handled the financials. We're done. I'm moving on. Just wanted you to hear it from me first. The responses ranged from stunned to supportive. A few didn't reply at all, which told me everything I needed to know about where their loyalty truly lay. Then I called my lawyer. Well, the woman who would soon be my lawyer. Her name was Melanie Cross, and she came highly recommended by a colleague who had survived a similar marital implosion. She answered on the second ring, sharp and direct. David Carson? Yes. I've been briefed. If what you're saying is true, you're already in a strong position. You made the right move. I told her everything. How I'd found the messages, how I'd moved the money, how I had blocked Rachel and her access to every shared service we had. Melanie listened, occasionally asking a question, but never once interrupting. When I finished, she simply said, let her be the one who scrambles. We'll be the ones who win. I hung up feeling lighter. Not happy, but lighter. Like I had dropped a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying for years. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat in the living room, where Rachel used to light candles and watch her trashy reality shows. The silence wasn't haunting anymore. It was peaceful. I imagined Rachel sitting in that hotel room, her lover confused, her phone dead, her bank card declining. Maybe she'd call her mom next. Maybe she'd scream into the phone, painting herself as the victim, pretending I had lost my mind, hoping someone, anyone, would take her side. Let her scream. Let her lie. Because the truth had already been set in motion, and there was no undoing it now. This wasn't just the collapse of a marriage. It was the fall of an illusion. And I was the one who pulled the plug. The silence didn't last long. I was sipping my morning coffee the next day, sitting at the same kitchen table where Rachel used to plan her weekly meals and fake smiles. The sun filtered in through the blinds, the air unusually still. I hadn't slept much the night before, not because of regret, but because I was preparing for the backlash. I knew it would come. I just didn't expect the first wave to be her mother. My phone lit up around 8:13 a.m. Margaret, Rachel's mom. I stared at it for a few seconds, then took a deep breath and answered. I wasn't in the mood for a performance, but I was ready. The line crackled for a moment before her voice came barreling through like a freight train. You selfish bastard, she screamed. No hello. No pause. No curiosity. Just fury. Because of you, Rachel can't even enjoy her trip with a real man. You've ruined everything. She's stranded in New York. No money. No phone service. No explanation. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Morning to you too, Margaret. Don't you dare get snide with me, she snapped. You always had control issues. Now you've gone too far. This is cruel, cutting her off like some criminal. You should be ashamed. I smiled. Not because I found it funny, but because it was so damn predictable. For years, Margaret had treated me like I was never quite good enough for her daughter. Too quiet, too methodical, too boring. She once told Rachel that marrying a man like me was practical, not passionate. Well, I suppose I had just proved her wrong. I see you've taken your daughter's side, I said coolly. So let me ask you something, Margaret. Did she tell you who she's in New York with? She's working, she spat. She's under stress. You clearly drove her into someone else's arms with your controlling, robotic behavior. Ah, there it was. The excuse. The classic rewrite of reality where the cheater becomes the victim and the betrayed becomes the villain. I'd almost bet money Rachel had already played the pity card, feeding her mother some sob story about how I'd turned cold, how I wasn't supportive, how Kyle just understood her better. I leaned back in my chair, voice steady as a blade. If Kyle is such a real man, I said, he can pay for her escort services. Dead silence. No retort. No fake gasp. Just the sound of Margaret struggling to process what I'd just said. Then finally, a gasp. A sharp inhale, like someone had been slapped across the face. Excuse me, she whispered, suddenly unsure of her footing. You heard me, I said, standing up and walking toward the window. If she wants to live like that, let her. But don't you dare call me to defend it. And then, without waiting for her to gather another insult, I ended the call. Click. For a moment, the house was still again. I stared out at the empty street, my reflection faint in the window pane, coffee cup still warm in my hand. I knew Margaret would call back, or text, or rant to anyone who'd listen. But it didn't matter, because the real damage wasn't done to me anymore. It was circling back to Rachel. She was the one who gambled with comfort and trust and thought she'd never have to pay. She was the one who burned bridges thinking she'd never need to cross them again. Now she was isolated. No phone, no funds, and no access to my life. The lover she'd risked everything for? Now stuck with the bill and the weight of her reality. I could only imagine how the conversation between Rachel and Kyle must have gone. What do you mean your card's not working? Try another. Wait, he blocked you? What the hell is going on? Rachel, trying to smile it off. Kyle, growing more annoyed by the minute. That hotel suite, once a fantasy playground, now a pressure cooker. And Margaret, unable to fix it for the first time in her daughter's life. It was all unfolding exactly as I intended. Not out of spite, but out of justice. For years, I had given Rachel everything. Loyalty, stability, honesty. I had ignored the warning signs. Defended her when others questioned her late nights. Cooked her dinner, bought her gifts. Carried her through life without asking for anything but truth in return. And what did she give me? A knife in the back. So no, I didn't feel guilty for cutting her off. I didn't feel remorse for leaving her to deal with the consequences of her own betrayal. I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't tiptoeing around someone else's secrets. I was standing in the middle of them, lighting a match. And I was just getting started. After I hung up on Margaret, I tossed my phone onto the kitchen counter and just stood there for a moment, breathing in the silence. It was heavy, but not suffocating. No, this was the kind of silence that felt earned. Like I'd finally stepped out of someone else's storm and into the eye of it, where everything was finally clear. I knew the fallout would intensify. Margaret wouldn't stay quiet. She'd call relatives, friends, anyone who might listen to her sob story about how her precious daughter was being abused by a bitter, vindictive husband. But what she didn't realize, and what Rachel would soon learn, if she hadn't already, was that I wasn't reacting. I was responding. And everything that came next, they brought it on themselves. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text, from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Rachel using someone else's phone. David, we need to talk. Please. I don't know what's going on, but my cards aren't working. I can't reach you. Please don't do this. I stared at the message for a solid minute before locking the screen. You don't know what's going on. No. You know exactly what's going on. You just didn't think I'd find out. And now that I have, you want mercy? I went for a walk to clear my head. The air outside was cool, crisp, and carried that faint scent of fall. It reminded me of the early days of our relationship, back when Rachel used to wear oversized sweaters and tuck her hands into my jacket pockets when we walked down Main Street. She used to tell me I made her feel safe. And somewhere along the way, she decided safety was boring. When I got back home, I checked my phone again. 3 missed calls from that same unknown number. 1 voicemail. I played it through the speaker. David, it's me. Look, I don't know what's happening, but you need to call me back. Please. I can't pay for the hotel. My phone isn't working. I've tried everything. Cal doesn't know what to do. This is insane. You're acting like a child. You're being so immature and cruel. Please, just talk to me. We can work this out. That last line nearly made me laugh. Work this out. As if this was a billing dispute or a minor misunderstanding. As if she hadn't been sleeping with my best friend, sneaking around, gaslighting me for months while she played the role of dutiful wife. The only thing more insulting than her betrayal was the assumption that I'd just let it slide once she got uncomfortable. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the longer the silence stretched, the louder it became for her. That night, I imagined the hotel room. Her pacing, Cal checking his wallet, maybe grumbling that he didn't sign up to babysit her problems. She probably still thought she could flip the script, cry a little, guilt me into sending money, play the wounded wife. But every door she used to escape accountability was sealed shut. I had made sure of it. No money, no access, no control. She wasn't in charge anymore. I was. And the cracks were starting to show. The next day, I got a text from a mutual friend, Jason, someone I trusted just enough to share the truth with early on. He sent me a message that simply said, "Bro, Kyle's blowing up in the group chat. He's pissed. Said he's stuck in New York with Rachel and she's a walking disaster. Thought you'd enjoy that." I did. It was confirmation that the pressure was working. The affair that once felt so exciting, so electric, so indulgent, was unraveling fast. Because cheating always feels glamorous when you're living in fantasy. But the moment it collides with real-world consequences, it turns toxic. Kyle wanted to play the role of the secret lover. He never signed up to be the broke boyfriend stuck covering hotel bills, Uber rides, and overpriced wine while Rachel cried about losing everything. He didn't want the responsibility that came with her lies. He just wanted the thrill. Well, he had it now, and I was content to let them rot in the mess they made together. Margaret kept trying too. She left a string of voicemails ranging from furious to desperate, each more pathetic than the last. In one, she actually accused me of ruining Rachel's future. No, Margaret, your daughter did that all on her own. I wasn't the villain. I was the line in the sand. For years, I gave Rachel the benefit of the doubt. I chose grace. I chose patience. I chose to believe in the good in her, even when my gut begged me not to. Now, I was choosing something else. My dignity, my freedom, and the quiet, cold satisfaction of knowing that Rachel had finally come face to face with something she'd avoided her whole life. Accountability. And she had no one to blame but herself. The silence didn't last. By the fifth day, the unraveling had turned into a full-blown collapse. Rachel's control over the situation, over me, was gone, and for the first time in years, she had no script to follow, no illusion to hide behind. Her fantasy had officially become Kyle's reality, and it was a reality he didn't want. I could feel the shift even from miles away. The texts, the voicemails, the secondhand updates, they all painted the same picture. Rachel wasn't in control anymore. She was stranded, exposed, humiliated. And Kyle, the man who once couldn't wait to sneak around behind my back, was suddenly faced with the mess of loving someone with no parachute. The man who helped destroy my marriage now had to foot the bill for its ashes. Jason messaged me again. "Dude, Kyle's freaking out. He just posted in our chat that Rachel maxed out his credit card at some hotel restaurant. Says he can't believe he got himself into this." I chuckled, slow and bitter. What did he think this was going to be? A passionate escape? Some romantic comedy, ending where they'd run off into the New York skyline and toast to a life built on betrayal? No. What they had wasn't love, it was indulgence. And indulgence always comes with a price tag. Now he was paying for it. Literally. Meanwhile, Rachel had moved from desperation to fury. I could feel it in the tone of the new messages she was sending from another unfamiliar number. "You've made your point, David. This is cruel. It's petty. You're humiliating me." Humiliation? No, Rachel. That came when you climbed into bed with my best friend. That came when you lied to my face, kissed me goodbye, and headed off to another man like I was some clueless fool left holding your coat. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. And it was long overdue. But what really sealed it, what truly made me realize just how deep her entitlement ran, was the next message. "I'm coming back early. We need to talk about what you did." What I did. That was the moment it hit me. Rachel still saw herself as the victim. Even after everything had been laid bare, she still thought she could flip the narrative. That with enough spin, enough tears, enough deflection, she could make me out to be the villain. She underestimated me. Again, I didn't respond. I simply forwarded that message to my lawyer, Melanie Cross, who was already preparing the formal divorce filing. She called me that afternoon. "She's cracking," Melanie said confidently. "And that's exactly where we want her. Emotionally unstable, financially exposed, and in no position to negotiate." "Good," I said. "She's earned every minute of this." Melanie chuckled. "You know, I've handled a lot of cheating cases, but I rarely see a husband handle it this cleanly. You didn't chase her. You cut her off. Most people can't stomach that kind of control under pressure. That's because most people still care. I take it you don't anymore." I paused, staring out the window. "I care that I wasted 8 years on someone who didn't deserve me. But her? No, not anymore." After the call, I sat alone in the living room. The sunlight crept across the floorboards as the day dragged on. It was quiet, still, and for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace. I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. There's a difference. I missed the idea of Rachel, the woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, who used to ask me to stay in bed a little longer on Sunday mornings, the woman who looked me in the eye and said she loved me, and at the time, I believed it. But that woman was a lie. The real Rachel was someone who lied with ease, who betrayed without guilt, who ran to another man and called it love, only to panic when the consequences came knocking. She had destroyed our marriage with her bare hands. I had simply returned the favor, with precision. That night, I took out the box from the closet, the one where we kept old photos, anniversary cards, little souvenirs from weekend trips. I opened it, flipped through the memories like a stranger reading someone else's life story, and quietly began feeding each item into the fireplace. One by one. Photo. Burn. Card. Burn. Letter. Burn. By the time the flames died down, the ashes were all that remained of our so-called perfect life. And I didn't shed a single tear, because this wasn't grief. It was closure. The Rachel I loved was gone, and the one who replaced her? She was never coming back. 3 days later, she came back. I was sitting on the porch that evening, nursing a glass of bourbon, watching the wind stir the leaves on our front lawn, my front lawn now. The locks had already been changed, the alarm system reset. Her key wouldn't work, and I knew it. But I still wasn't ready for the moment when her car finally pulled into the driveway, the tires crunching over gravel like nails digging into memory. Rachel stepped out slowly. She was wearing the same blazer she had on the day she left, but it looked wrinkled, tired. Her hair was messy, her heels scuffed. She wasn't the polished, confident woman who had kissed me goodbye before her business trip. She looked like someone who had just watched her perfect plan implode. She looked like reality had finally caught up with her. She saw me sitting there, and she hesitated. Good. I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't even blink. I just watched as she closed the door, walked up the path, and stopped in front of the steps. She tried the knob out of habit, like muscle memory was going to override the consequences of betrayal. The lock didn't budge. Her face tightened. "You changed the locks?" she asked, her voice brittle. "Sure did," I said, not bothering to stand. "David, come on. We need to talk." "No," I replied. "You need to talk. I've already heard enough." She stepped up onto the porch, arms folded, trying to pull herself together. "I made a mistake." That line, "I made a mistake," the oldest, most exhausted excuse in the cheater's handbook. As if she'd just taken a wrong turn. As if this wasn't something she planned and fed for months. As if it wasn't calculated, coordinated, rehearsed. Which part? I asked coldly. Lying? Sleeping with my best friend? Or thinking I'd never find out? She winced, but kept going. "Kyle, he's not who I thought he was. I was confused, I felt alone, and that gave you the right to destroy our marriage." I cut in. "Don't feed me excuses, Rachel. You had choices. You made them." She paused, eyes darting to the glass in my hand. "Can I come in?" "No." She took a breath like she was trying to reset the moment, rewind it into something manageable. "I didn't come back to fight," she said. "I came back to fix this." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Fix what? The marriage you burned to the ground? The trust you buried under months of lies?" I was lost, David. You were so distant. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. Funny, I said, leaning forward. Because I remember reaching out to you. Over and over. And every time I did, you were too busy, too tired, or too buried in your phone. I thought we could start over. That's when I stood. I walked down the steps, stood just inches from her, and looked her in the eyes. Not the woman I married, but the one who broke every vow she once swore to uphold. Start over? There is no reset button, Rachel. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. And now that the man you traded me for is bailing on the bill, you want to come crawling back like nothing happened? Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. I'd seen her cry before. I'd even comforted her when she did. But this time, the tears weren't for me. They were for her, for the comfort, the stability, the life she lost. I made a terrible mistake, she whispered. Please, just let me explain. No. My voice was calm. Final. You don't get to explain your way out of this. You explained yourself the moment you stepped into that hotel room with him. That was your choice. This is mine. I pulled a manila envelope from the chair next to me and handed it to her. What is this? The divorce papers. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't contact me directly again. She didn't open it. Just stood there, hands trembling, like she still couldn't believe this was really happening. Like this wasn't the ending she imagined when she booked that trip with Kyle. Her voice cracked. David, please. Don't do this. I still love you. I looked her in the eyes one last time. No, Rachel. You loved having me. That's not the same thing. Then I turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind me with a click that echoed louder than any scream ever could. On the other side of that door was a woman who gambled everything and lost. And on this side was a man who finally understood that peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away with your head held high and never looking back. The door clicked shut behind me, and with it, so did every remaining piece of whatever we once were. Rachel stood on the other side, probably still holding the divorce papers, still hoping I'd crack, still clinging to some twisted belief that this was just a phase, just a dramatic bump in the road we could somehow survive. But what she didn't understand, what she never understood, was that this wasn't some emotional outburst. This was my liberation. I stood in the foyer, taking a long breath. The silence felt different now. It didn't hurt. It didn't echo with what-ifs or regrets. It was clean, unburdened, like the house had finally purged its ghosts. She didn't knock again, and I didn't look out the window to watch her drive away. I didn't care. The next morning, I met with Melanie Cross, my lawyer, at her downtown office. She slid the folder across the table toward me like she was presenting a weapon. She's already contacted legal counsel, Melanie said. She's panicking. Her new boyfriend cut her loose, and now she's trying to salvage whatever comfort she can. Her lawyer suggested mediation. I scoffed. Of course they did. Melanie nodded. They'll frame it like it's a fair compromise, split the assets, maybe even ask for spousal support if she's bold enough. But the paper trail of her affair gives U.S. leverage. You play this smart, David. You walk away with everything you deserve. What does she walk away with? I asked. Melanie met my gaze, unflinching. Exactly what she earned. I signed the papers. Later that night, I sat by the fireplace, flipping through the last few items I had salvaged from the wreckage. Some old photographs, a letter she once wrote me on our anniversary, a souvenir from a cabin trip we took up north. Each one felt like a memory stolen by a stranger. The woman in those images wasn't the one I just handed divorce papers to. That woman was long gone. I burned the rest. Not in anger. In closure. You can't rebuild a life if you're still dragging around the bones of the last one. The following week, the fallout from her decisions continued to unravel. This time, not in whispers or texts, but in the form of people finally seeing her for who she really was. Jason messaged again. You were right. Everyone's turning on her now. Kyle won't speak to her. Even her mom's been quiet. Good. Let them sit in it. Let the ones who defended her see how quickly the mask slips when the safety net disappears. One night, I ran into a mutual friend of ours, Leah, someone Rachel used to gossip with behind my back. We crossed paths at a local bookstore. She looked surprised to see me. You look good, she said cautiously. I am good, I replied. Better than I've been in years. She hesitated. I didn't know it was that bad. I mean, I knew something was off with Rachel, but you knew, I interrupted. You just didn't want to admit it. She had the decency to look ashamed. I left her standing there without another word. I wasn't wasting any more time explaining my story to people who only paid attention once the drama became undeniable. If you weren't standing with me at my lowest, you didn't deserve to be in my life when I was rising. And that's what I was doing now, rising. I'd started running again, working out, cooking my own meals. I turned the guest bedroom into a home office, finally launching the freelance project I'd been putting off for years. Every small win felt like a stitch in the wound. Not a bandage, a permanent repair. Healing wasn't instant, but it was happening. One morning, I stepped outside with a fresh cup of coffee and looked out over the street where Rachel once pulled away in her sleek little car, thinking she was driving off to something better. I smiled, because the Real upgrade had been mine. She lost comfort, stability, and the unwavering loyalty of a man who would have walked through fire for her. I lost someone who never deserved me to begin with. And in that trade, I came out ahead. Rachel's story ended in a hotel room, scrambling for help from a man who saw her for what she really was. Mine, it was just beginning. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with clarity, and the strength that only comes when you finally stop fighting for someone who was never fighting for you. 6 months later, my house felt like mine again. The scent of her perfume no longer lingered in the corners. Her forgotten scarves and half-used cosmetics were long gone. The bedroom had new sheets, the living room new energy, and the air, once thick with secrets, now breathed peace. It's strange how silence changes when it's no longer a symptom of avoidance, but a sign of healing. The divorce finalized with barely a whimper from Rachel's side. Melanie had been right. The evidence, the timing, the financial trail, even the messages from Kyle made it impossible for her to negotiate. Her lawyer tried to play the sympathy card, but it fell flat. Rachel walked away with nothing she hadn't earned. And I walked away with everything that mattered: my dignity, my future, and my freedom. Still, in quiet moments, I caught myself thinking back. Not out of longing, but reflection. I replayed it all: her lies, her mother's scorn, Kyle's downfall. I remembered how easily she'd smiled while hiding so much behind her eyes. The image used to haunt me. Now, it taught me. Not everyone who says they love you actually does. Not everyone who promises forever understands what that really means. And not every battle is worth bleeding for. The true victory lies in walking away when someone shows you who they really are. I wasn't bitter anymore. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. One crisp Sunday morning, I decided to revisit a place I hadn't seen since before the betrayal. The old lake house where Rachel and I once spent a long weekend early in our marriage. It was just a few hours' drive out of Dallas. I needed to see it, not to remember her, but to remember me. I packed light. No one waiting for me, no one expecting anything. Just the road, the woods, and that quiet little dock where I once watched the sun melt into the water, thinking life couldn't get any better. It had, just in a different way. When I got there, I sat on that dock again, let the wind hit my face, and for the first time in a long time, I closed my eyes without fear of what was behind them. I stayed for hours, thinking, breathing, living. On the way back, I stopped at a roadside diner for coffee. That's where I met Emily. She was sitting a few stools down at the counter, reading a worn-out paperback with a cup of black coffee in her hand. She looked up and gave me a polite nod, the kind of small gesture you don't expect to mean anything. But it did. We started talking. She was sharp, funny, unfiltered. A school counselor, divorced, 2 years out of her own storm. There was something about her, not flashy, not overly polished, but grounded, honest. The conversation flowed easily, and by the time the waitress brought the check, I had already offered to pay for her coffee. She smiled and said, "Only if you join me again next Sunday." I did, and the Sunday after that. We took it slow. No big declarations, no promises, just moments, real ones. No secrets, no masks, just two people learning to live again after being broken. And that's when it hit me. Healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from restoration, from choosing to rebuild with intention, not rage. Rachel had tried to destroy me, but in the end, she set me free. She taught me what to look for, what to run from, and more importantly, what not to settle for. She wanted a thrill. I wanted truth. She chased fantasy. I built a future. And the final lesson? Sometimes, the person who hurts you the most is the one who shows you your worth. So, if you're listening to this, if you're someone who's been betrayed, blindsided, discarded, Let me tell you something no one else will. You don't need closure from the person who broke you. You don't need their apology. You don't need them to see your pain. You need to see yourself, to reclaim your voice, to take your story back. That's what I did. And now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a broken man. I see a survivor, a fighter, a man who didn't just endure betrayal, but rose from it. My name is David Carson, and this is not a story about a cheating wife. This is a story about a man who chose to rise when everything in his world tried to bury him. And I've never been more alive. Looking back on everything, I've come to understand that betrayal, no matter how devastating, isn't the end. It's the beginning of truth. I used to believe that loyalty could fix anything, that if I just held on long enough, love would be enough. But love without respect is just slow self-destruction. The lesson? Protect your peace, even if it means letting go of someone you once built your world around. Trust should never be blind, and forgiveness should never be automatic, especially for those of us who've lived long enough to know how precious time really is. Don't waste your golden years clinging to people who drain the light from your life. Choose honesty. Choose self-worth. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I don't regret walking away. I regret not walking sooner. So if you're sitting in silence, wondering whether you deserve better, the answer is yes. You always have. Because peace, dignity, and truth, they're not luxuries. They're your birthright. And it's never too late to claim them.